Welcome, welcome, all buffs and anybody else that's really kind of joining this broadcast right now. So this is Friday early afternoon. It's about 12:30 here in Colorado, and we're a little bit late. I'm a little bit late getting this video out. The breakdown of the K-State game, but I've been on vacation this week, and it's been kind of nice. And so, therefore, I didn't really do a lot of work outside of working on cars and going hiking and stuff like that. But it's time to knuckle down. If you guys hadn't seen earlier, I was in Vegas this last weekend, and so I have my background as Circa in this video right now because that place is it changed my life. Man, I've always loved sports books, but I've never really gone to a lot of them. And being in Vegas for the first time in like 20 years, it was a great opportunity. Slid by Circa on the last day, and by far and away the best sports book in Vegas that I went to anyway. But it looks like the best one without a doubt. So if you haven't been there, you definitely need to go see that. But we're talking about KSU at this point. And early in the year, this was one of the losses that I put down for Colorado. And I thought we were going to lose 4 games, and I thought K-State was going to be one of them because they looked like world beaters at the time. But, everything in college football has changed this year. I mean, Alabama loses in spectacular fashion, which really blew me away and kind of opened up the possibilities of what this year could bring us. When you're looking at, the fact that they could lose to Vanderbilt and what Vanderbilt did to such a great team, we could literally beat anybody at this point, looking at the talent that we have on our squad and looking at the rest of the season and what has happened to those teams, which we will talk about in another video. But K-State has come down a lot of notches in my book, and they are currently ranked number 18. And I've looked at this now all week, and a good buddy of mine, we were out in Vegas, and we talked about this briefly, but I don't know why Kansas State is 18th. I'll be honest with you. I mean, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to play this out as Colorado is going to absolutely just completely stomp KSU because I don't think that's the case whatsoever. But at the same time, I feel like this game is now manageable for us. And, they're number 18. Let's go through the specifics. 8:15 kickoff tomorrow night, so it's going to be a very late game. And I'll go into what I think is going to happen to this game at the very end. But I think it's not going to surprise you very much, considering that we like to play overtime games late at night. I'm just going to put it that way. It's at Folsom Field on ESPN. Just an exciting game. I'm not going to call it a homecoming for Dylan Edwards because this isn't his home. Colorado's not his home. But he started with us, and I think most of us have good feelings towards Dylan Edwards. He left in the right way. He wanted to go home. He wanted to get more exposure on a team, and he found that. And we'll go through him here in just a second. But if you're in the broadcast, go ahead and put comments down below. And I'd really appreciate it if, this is a free show. We don't charge for this, obviously. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, that would mean a great deal to us. We're trying to hit 7,000 subs. We've been chasing that mark for a while now. It just I don't post a lot of videos, so it kind of doesn't move a lot. But that would mean a great deal to me. We're both 4-1 right now, and I would put the tipping scale to us because we're 2-0 in conference, whereas K-State is 1-1 in conference. They got absolutely delaminated by BYU, and even though I think they played a decent game, they just had a lot of turnovers, and we'll go into that in just a minute. But here's a question: does it feel like Colorado can win the Big 12? That is a great question because I think they can. At the beginning of the year, I thought it was going to be a really a big uphill battle to get to, even considering us being in the top of the Big 12. But look at how things have just fallen apart in the Big 12 from the standpoint of the top teams. Now, really, I think it's anybody's game. I say anybody's game. It's 4 or 5 teams are really kind of vying for this. And Colorado, I think, has the upper hand on all of them because I think we have the best overall team. And I don't say that just because I'm a Colorado homer. Obviously, we have one of the best defenses in the entirety of college football. And our defense has gone from suspect in game 1 to every single game getting better and better and better. And if we continue this trend, which it's a trend, so there's no reason why you would think that a trend wouldn't stop, right? Or that a trend wouldn't continue. This trend will continue. We will get better. And if we end up with one of the best defenses in the Big 12, which we have a little ways to go, there's no reason why we can't win the Big 12. And then we're talking potentially about a playoff berth. So in Coach Prime's second year, the possibilities looking at the Vanderbilt Alabama game are endless. They are endless right now. But we have to get past this game. And I think that the KSU game is probably the most evenly matched game we are going to play, or that we have played so far this year. And I don't mean evenly matched from offense to defense. I just mean that their strengths are our weaknesses and our strengths are their weaknesses. And we're both very solid teams that can put a lot of points on the board. And so therefore, it's going to be a back and forth battle. And I really like our odds in this, even though I think it's going to be really tight. So does it feel like Colorado can win the Big 12? Absolutely. I think that we actually have right now, I think we have one of the better hands at doing this. I think BYU is in that discussion, obviously. But at this point, I even think early in the year, I thought if we played BYU, that we would get beaten by BYU. But I don't think that anymore, even though they haven't done anything to show, as far as I'm concerned, that they're any weaker than they were at the beginning of the year. I still think at this point we're getting stronger, and they're not. Colorado 2-0, K-State 1-1 in the Big 12. Kansas State's ranking. I mean, who did they beat? They beat OSU, which at the beginning of the year, if you said that, you would think, okay, well, that's deserving. But then looking at OSU now through the first 4 or 5 games, the OSU is not the same team they were last year. Tennessee, Martin, not even going to talk about that, right? Tulane, not even going to talk about that really either. And then they beat Arizona, who was ranked at the time, but is no longer ranked and not looking as strong as they did last year either. So really, who has Kansas State beaten? They really haven't beaten anybody so far. And honestly, if you look at our record too, it's kind of the same thing. That's why I say we're really evenly matched. So this is going to be the game that's going to tell everybody who's the boss, right? And we are the boss. Colorado is the boss. And then let's just get to breaking down. Let's get to breaking down the game. Right now, you're looking at KSU's offense. Avery Johnson, obviously, you've heard a lot about this quarterback. You've probably seen him quite a bit. But he is a suspect passing quarterback. I mean, he can complete some passes, but he's really a runner, and he's a strong runner too. 7.3 yards per carry. His stats for running match DJ's. DJ Giddens, which is the next one I'm going to talk about, the running back for K-State, the primary running back. They're both at 7.3 yards per carry. And that puts DJ Giddens he's the number 9 rusher in the country and the number 8 yards per carry. So that puts Avery Johnson in that same group. So I don't understand how or why Avery Johnson is as good as he is with the run. And we are our defense is suspect against rushing quarterbacks, obviously. We've seen some quarterbacks aren't even rushing quarterbacks rush for 80, 90 yards on us this year. But we know Avery Johnson and we know what he can and can't do. And I think that's the difference in this, is that some of the other quarterbacks that have run on us were good passers as well. In fact, a couple of them were great passers and they were terrible at running, but for some reason they found a hole and they could run on us. But this, I think Avery Johnson is going to be a little bit different. I think we're actually going to be keying on him. Obviously, we're going to be keying on him, and I think that's going to turn the tides for us. The number 3 offensive point I wanted to bring up is Dylan Edwards. So Dylan Edwards for us was he was a good back, but we really used him on some short passes more than anything else because we thought that he was too small, especially with our offensive line at the time. He wasn't going to be able to get very many yards per carry. Well, he found his footing at KSU and just rushing 6.9 yards per carry. So he doesn't carry it as often as, for instance, DJ does. But at 6.9 yards per carry, even though DJ is at 7.28 and Avery Johnson's at 7.3, it's a 3-headed monster when it comes to rushing there. Obviously, their offensive line is stellar when it comes to the run. They've practiced that all year. They practiced it all fall camp, and they're really good at it. And so that's going to be our biggest test. And then the number 4 point for KSU's offense is they're the number 7 rushing offense at 6.93 yards per carry, but they're the 108th passing offense at 180.2 yards per catch or yards per game. And so at 108th with our offense, I think you can see where the game plan's coming into play, right? Now, if you want to talk about KSU's defense, there's not a lot to say. I mean, linebacker and safety play is really kind of what they're good at. Their linebackers are good. In fact, their number one linebacker, or I should say their number one tackler is a linebacker in Austin Romaine. And then their number 2 stopper is actually Jacob Parrish, who's a safety. And so their linebacker and safety play is really, really, really top notch. Now, when you get back down onto the line, Brendan Mott, who is their 6-year edge, so he's been with KSU for 6 years, 6'5", 260 pounds, has had 4 sacks this year and has had at least a half a sack in every game with exception of the OSU game. So Mott being an edge is somebody that we really need to look out after. I mean, KSU's defense can bring it. They really can. So that's something that we need to be looking for. One of the key stats for KSU's defense is Tulane passed for 342 yards. And that tells you right there that if Tulane can pass for 350 yards, we can pass for 500 or better. I really feel that is a true statement. And most of teams that they've played haven't even tried more than 23 to 25 passing attempts on KSU's defense anyway. So they don't have a lot of reps. In fact, I think that the team that threw on them the most was Tulane at 31 attempts. Actually, no, it wasn't. Tulane had 29 attempts. Oklahoma State had 31 attempts. So, and we're gonna throw the ball way more than that. I mean, I think we average like between 38 and 42 attempts passing. So, I think we're really going to expose their defense there. And then the stats for KSU's defense, they're the number 100 pass defense. So they're terrible at 12.72 yards per catch. And that 12.72 is a key statistic because we're going to get to that in a minute. But they're the number 16 rush defense. So very good against the rush. Obviously, their second levels, their linebackers and their third levels or safeties are really key in stopping the run there, which I think obviously is the reason why they're not as good in the pass either, because they key so much on the run. They're so good there. But now you get to Colorado's offense. So Sheduer Sanders, 70.1% efficiency, 1,630 yards. He's the number 28 pass efficiency quarterback. And that may sound kind of low, but when you look at passing efficiency, I mean, you're splitting hairs. You're talking about fractions of 1 point, really, between where Sheduer is at and the number 15. So there's just a lot of good quarterbacks this year that, as far as passing efficiency is concerned. Running backs, key statistic for running back. We have 3 running backs that have very, very similar, let's say, carries / yardage. And in fact, Micah Welch and Isaiah are in a dead heat. Isaiah's got 1 more carry on Micah, and they both have like, I think 115, 117 yards each. So they're within a few yards of each other actually too. But, at the beginning of the year, if you told me that Isaiah was going to be our number 1 rusher, I would have said probably, you probably didn't know what you were talking about, because we already had Micah on board, and we also had, Micah just by himself, Micah and Dallin Hayden. Of course, Dallin Hayden went out due to an injury. So if that hadn't happened, he obviously probably would be our number 1 rushing running back right now. But just considering that between those 3 guys, between Micah and Isaiah and Dallin, right there, we have a 3-headed monster that we could actually get back into the running game again. And we're going to get into the stats here in just a second. So the number 3 Colorado offense point I wanted to bring up is Travis. Number 1 in receptions. He's our number 1 receiver, 561 yards, number 9 in the country, and tied for 5th in TDs in the country with 6. So even though he is I don't even know what you call it, he's not a full time receiver, right? He's not a full time defensive back. He's a full time in both. So for him to be the number one receiver for Colorado with the great receivers that we have, and number 9 in the country in receiving yards is just spectacular. And so he's going to be obviously a key to this game. He's a key to every game. Honestly, if Travis doesn't play in any one of these games, we stand a chance of losing in any game. If he is in every game, we have a chance of winning every single game. Even if we were to go play Alabama right now, right after their big loss, I think that we would have an easier time beating Alabama than Vanderbilt did. And I'm just going to say that right now, except for one key factor, which we're going to get to in a second, which Vanderbilt did, which I think we need to get better at. And we'll talk about that in a second. But Colorado is number 1 passing offense, or the number 9 passing offense, 326 yards per game, and the number 126 rush offense, which blows my mind because honestly, when I went to go look up that stat, I for sure thought that we would be in the 60s, maybe the low 70s. But I keep forgetting that early in the year we sucked in the rushing game, and we just finally got better at it the last few games. So we're a little bit behind in that stat. So that's just a stat for stat's sake. It really doesn't mean anything. I think we're a better rushing team than that number gives us. And it's just like our defense. Our rushing game is coming on strong late. So the stats aren't going to tell us anything that we need to know. And I got to turn the page because I have a lot of notes, guys. What do you guys have to say in the comments? Let me see what you got. Hey, Dante S. Big game. Yes. Byron Rainey, Isaiah is a dog. I really love Isaiah. I love watching him. And we talked about him earlier in the year being, our biggest back, and the fact that this is going to be fun watching him bulldoze people. But he's even better than that. He's making people miss. It's really nice. On here end 0260. Yeah. Those are some pretty big shows out there. Good afternoon. Let's go Buffs. We're still at the bottom in sacks allowed. That scares me. Yes, I agree. The sacks are a problem. And we talked about Brandon Mott, who is a little bit of a sack machine. He's got 4 sacks this year. He's their notable edge, 6-year guy, real smart, big guy. He came back for his 6th season. I watched an interview with him recently, and he talked about he wanted to make a mark this year because he didn't think he was ready for the NFL from the standpoint of he thought that he had more to show. And so that kind of tells me that if I'm Brandon Mott, this is my key game. This is the game where I'm going to show a stat. And if I can sack Sheduer 1 or 2 times, that's going to be, he's got that little swing arm thing that he does after he makes a sack. It's kind of annoying. But on the other hand, I mean, if you're sacking somebody, you get to celebrate a little bit, I guess. But that's a problem right there. And that I know if he can also switch sides. So he can play left and can play right edge. So, he doesn't always have to go up against Seton. He can flip to the other side. And so this will be an interesting thing to watch as far as he is concerned. Now let's talk about the Colorado defense. Cam Silman-Craig is our stud of all studs. That guy, 37 tackles, 3 TFLs. Nakai Hill-Green, 32 tackles, 5 TFLs, and 1 sack. Those 2 guys right there, I'm going to say, I don't want to leave out Travis in this, but those 2 guys are really, I'm going to say, the heartbeat of our defense. The second and third levels that we have on our defense, very similar to the way K-State does it. They're really kind of a key to our dominance, I guess, on defense the last few games. So I'm going to put those 2 guys as 2 of the bigger keys in our defense. Obviously, Travis and Preston Hodge, both with 2 interceptions each. And one of the stats for KSU that you might not know is they have a lot of interceptions and fumbles. The takeaways on them are really high, and they're kind of known for losing the ball. So this could be a game. One of the keys that I have for this game is that, this might be a good game to expose their ability to be able to hold on to the football. And, this is, one of the reasons why they lost to BYU in such extreme fashion is because they had 3 turnovers in that game. If you look at the stats, the BYU and K-State stats, KSU pretty much dominated from a stats perspective. And um, uh, BYU didn't really show a lot. But the key is that K-State had a lot of prolific turnovers, and it turned into points for BYU. And so therefore, they lost the game, and we could take advantage of that. We have very, very good defensive backs. And now we have Sanders back on defense again. And, he's a turnover machine. So I think that this is going to be an epic game for our defense against one of the better rushing offenses in the country. So, and then as far as our turnovers are concerned, we have had 9 takeaways this year on our defense. So, and that ranks pretty high up there in college football. And then we're number 80th in rush defense and number 82 in pass defense. So our defense is coming on. So number 80 rush defense, I still don't think that's not a great number for us. Obviously, we've gotten better over the last few games. So that number actually, I think, shows if you were just cut the last 2 games out, we're probably in the top 40 maybe in rush defense, I'm going to say. So we'll take a look at that. Now, keys to the game. So these are the keys to the game for me. CU offense, establish the run early. And I say that every single week. Like, it could be easy. You can just roll out the same things every week. But one of the things that I took away from the Tulane Alabama game is that, as mind-blowing as that game was, Tulane had the ball for 42 minutes. Alabama had the ball for 17 minutes. When you keep Alabama's offense off the field for the majority of the game, the vast majority of the game, for 3/4 of the game, Alabama's not going to score a lot of points. That's how Tulane did it. Tulane ran the ball. They just basically killed the clock. They smashed them up one side and down the other. And 42 minutes of time of possession is absolutely ludicrous. I keep saying Tulane. I meant Vanderbilt. I keep looking at the K-State Tulane game because there's a lot of notable things in that game. But no, I know it's Vanderbilt. So Vanderbilt did such great things in that game from the standpoint of just managing the game. They didn't go in there and just smash them. They bled them out. And that's, I think, something that we could take away from that game and use it for every game. We've talked about time of possession in every single game this year, and that's actually one of my points too. But run early, establish the run against the number 16 rush defense in the country. I think if we could do that, we break their back because they suck on in their pass defense. So if we could break their run defense early, we have the game at that point. I think we could really run away with the game if we could break their run defense. Now, if we can't, we can rely on the pass. But time of possession, keep the defense out there. They're playing at altitude. I think K-State is like probably at 700 feet, if I'm thinking of this right. They come up to altitude at night. And if we keep them on defense a lot, their depth is not all that great on defense. So if we can keep them out there for a while, we'll actually stand a chance in actually dominating them. Even in the second half, we get up big and we want to run the clock down, we could do that. Light up all receivers. So get all of our receivers out there. The big 4, which are Hunter, Horn, Western, and Shepard, all are 12.2 yards per catch or better. That is insane. Like, that is completely insane that our top 4 receivers are all over 12 yards per catch. So that stated, we should be able to rain all over their defense from that standpoint. I still, it's funny. Do you want to score too fast? I don't think so, because you're just giving the ball back to K-State, and K-State will run the ball and they will bleed the clock. So, and this could come down to the last possession in this game. And if you want to be last possession against a team that can own the clock, that's a problem. That's a big problem. Keys to CU defense, stack the box, force to pass. Like, I'm almost 100% on that. We played really good defense in the last 2 games without doing that so much. But there's something about Avery that is different than the other quarterbacks that we faced. And at a dang near 8 yards per carry for that quarterback, I just really worry about him. Like, do you want to put a spy on him? We've talked about this before. Spies are not as prevalent as they used to be in college football. And I hate the fact that when you spy somebody that you put your defense in a little bit of a bind, but it's a possibility that that might be something that we try in this game. Tackling is going to be huge. Tackling is going to be absolutely huge in this game. If we don't tackle them, if we don't get a good, strong form tackle on these guys, they're very strong runners. They're easily getting 2 to 6 yards after contact on every single carry. Add that up. Start adding up. 2 to 6, 2 to 6, 2 to 6, 2 to 6. They own that. They own that time frame. They own the clock at that point. They own first downs at that point. So we have to be really good at form tackling. These guys don't go down really easily with just a hit. You gotta wrap them up. And then turnovers. Beat them like BYU beat them. If we can get gang tackling going on and somebody gets in there and punches the ball, I mean, we all know that Sanders is really good at this. We could get another 2 to 3 turnovers off of Kansas State, make this game a lot easier for us. I'm just going to put it that way. But as far as I'm concerned, what this comes down to is who has the ball last. I think that it's going to be one of those games. I think we're going to score, they're going to score. We're going to score, they're going to score. They're going to run on us like they do everybody else. And if we don't bring our A game in the run game like we have the last 2 games, they could hurt us there and score a lot running. Obviously, we can pass all day long on them if everything holds true to what you can see in just the stat lines and looking at the games that have happened before this. We should own them in the passing game pretty easily. So this could just be a very high scoring game, like 40s and 30s, maybe like 42-38, something like that. But I definitely think it's going to come down to who has the ball last, or at least in the last series. Maybe an overtime game. This feels like an overtime game. And it's going to be overtime. Like the game's probably going to end about 11:30, let's say. So, and this is Mountain Time. And that feels right. That feels like 11:30. We're exhausted. They're exhausted. Players are exhausted. Everybody at home is exhausted. And yet we're going to go into overtime. So if that happens, one of the biggest things that we have to be able to do is trust our kicking game. This was something that I stated in the last 2 or 3 games. It felt like we didn't trust our kicking game and that we were going to take chances on 4th down. And we actually did at one point and we didn't convert it. And I'm going to bring that up in another live, but that really, God, man, I don't know. I about tore my eyeballs out on that one because it was like, it wasn't that long a kick for Mata. And I say not that long kick. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was 52 yards. And everybody in the chat's going to say, no. We don't want Mata at 52 yards. But just keep in mind, this is at home. This is at Folsom. We have extended kicking here because of the altitude and the thin air and all that kind of good stuff. And I think we should put our faith in the guys that Prime brought here, and he loves the fact that we have this great kicking game. So we got to trust in our kickers. So keys to the game, things I have not brought up yet. Throw them down there. Travis, Shine, Dante S. Somebody throw out there keys to the game that I did not bring up. We will be disciplined. Yes, Shine, we will. Hey, Sonia. I have not talked to you in a long time. Welcome to the show. Don't care about stats, but do you see the overall progress continue? Most importantly, the win. That's true. Stats are only one part of it because they're so muddled, especially early in the season. This is still technically early in the season. We started out a little rough in some areas, and we got, I think, overall as a team, we've gotten better. In fact, I can't think of one area that we've gotten worse in over the long haul. Okay. And Sheduer has been up and down this year a lot. So he had some games in the high 70s with completion percentage, and he had some games in the low 60s in completion. In fact, he had 2 games like at 60.1, 60.2. And him and Shepard have had a little bit of a connection issue. And, there's been those little things, but that happens with every quarterback. It happens in every offense. And I think we've overcome that, and that's good. We played some pretty decent pass defenses, this year, and that has a lot to do with it. But you can feel it coming together, and that's why when I brought up, does it feel like we can win the Big 12? I at the beginning of the year, like I said earlier, I want to all the time, and I will always try to find a way to bring that up and say we could win it if we did this, right? I rarely, if I don't think we can just overtly win something, that we're just going to win. What I will say is we can win if we do this, we can win if we do that, we can win if our defense shows up for the run and stuffs the run. Um, I think we can win the Big 12, and there are no ifs. If we do anything, if we play like we played last week, if we play like we have gotten better over the last 4 or 5 games, then we stand a great chance of winning the Big 12. BYU is the little like anomaly out there just floating in space. Texas Tech out there floating in space. I honestly don't have great feelings for them right now. We'll see in the next few games how they do. At one point, I thought they were both going to be really, really good. And now I'm thinking, and of course they are good, but now I'm thinking, are they better than us? I don't think they are. Travis says, O-line got to give 2 time and run the ball. Yes. So give 2 time. I agree with that statement. I still think there's possibilities. We can bring the tight end. I didn't bring the tight end in here as my key to the game because I brought it up every week, and every week we haven't done it. So at some point I got to just remove it, right? Because I don't think the tight end is in our game plan for the rest of the year. Unfortunately, I think that every team that has a good tight end play, I think stands a really good chance of beating anybody because it gives you your offense more dimension when you can add the tight end in there. You have a good running game or a decent running game. You have a great wide receiver game. One of the things that can really bring you up is either running backs that can catch in the flat or tight ends that can cross over in the center, over in the middle of the field. And we have backs that can run the ball or that can catch the ball. In fact, all of them have shown propensity to do that, including Offerdahl. In fact, I think I need to go back and look at the stat, but I'm almost positive if we're not 100% on passes to the running back, we are close. Because up to, I think, last week or the week before, we were 100%. I've been kind of watching that stat because we show that we can do that, and we show that we can pick up key first downs doing that, but it's not something that's prevalent in our game. And that kind of befuddles me a little bit. So there's that right there, right? But what else? Let's see. T says, no one is giving the D-line they're just due, in my opinion. I hope they come out and dominate these guys. So here's I'm glad you brought that up. This is the game that's going to tell everybody whether or not our D-line is for real. We know our D-line is for real. I think our D-line is as good as any D-line in the country if you were to separate them out all by themselves. And I don't think they started that way. I think it got to that point. I think we developed as a team over the first few games, and they've really become a unit. And our depth is good. Our depth is unlike a lot of other schools. Our depth is really good, and that makes a really big difference for us. Makes a huge difference for us to have Tajay and guys like that coming out off the bench, let's say, if they're not starting, and be able to rack up TFLs. I mean, you can see these guys coming off the bench that aren't starting, and we're getting good games from them. Hey, Polo is in the chat. I do actually wish we had a tight end game. We do have a QB, I admit. I said 5-7 season at the beginning. Our D-line has to come. Correct. Yes. I don't know. I said that. I don't even remember actually saying that we were going to be 8-4 this year, but I did say that there were 4 games that I don't think we're going to win, which means that I thought that we were going to win a minimum, or we're going to lose a minimum of 4 games. One of them was the K-State game. I have since changed my tune, obviously, because our defense came and started playing, and we found a slight resemblance to a running game. I think our running high at this point is 123, 128 in a game. I'm still looking for that 150 mark. And the reason why isn't because I just, love to run the ball, which I do. I do. I like the running game. But it has more to do with the way that we're managing the clock and the fact that if we don't have to put it all on Sheduer, it means less sacks for Sheduer, which means more time for him to throw the ball when he does throw it. And it also takes a lot of the pressure off the O-line. So those things all together is the reason why I'm looking for that 150 to 180 year rushing game this year. And again, kind of like the tight end game, I don't think it's going to come, but I want it to. Polo says, yes, I've since changed that tune as well. T says, right, complimentary football matters. Complimentary football matters. I 100% agree. I'm going to go back in the chat just a little bit. There was a comment in here, and I don't remember who said it. Special teams, Dante. Actually, a couple of people said that. Travis said it too. Our special teams have been suspect this year. So if you talk about maybe a weak link in the team from the standpoint of not being able to see a lot of progress would be in special teams, but you should know, right? You should know that our coaches focused on that the last 2 weeks and said our defense is getting so good that it's actually being called out in the media as being a very strong defense, which is really refreshing to hear. Our O-line is being called out for its play and especially individual players on that line. Even though Sheduer had, a 6-sack game and stuff like that. Overall, the line is markedly better than last year. Our running game looks steadily better. Our passing game has always been there, right? And our receivers look really good. So what about the special teams and kicking? Special teams and kicking, that is the key that I think the coach is focused on over this last little bit. KR says, I expect to beat K-State. Years of them being an auto win for us is ingrained in my head memory. Yeah. K-State has a history of either being the whipping post or the surprise team that comes out and beats everybody. I remember the coldest game I've ever been to in my life was the Big 12 championship game with K-State and OU. And I drove faster than I'm going to admit to get to the game on time from at the time I was in Oklahoma City, or was it Tulsa? It was one of those two cities. Anyway, we got there and it had to have been -10 in that stadium. And my feet were so frozen that when we went to go walk out, I stumbled because my feet were so frozen. But we sat there and we got to watch OU get decimated by K-State. And so ever since that day, I've always had I don't want to say a disdain for K-State because I respect them a lot. But man, the way that they're able to surprise teams is incredible. So anyway, that was my story. I was questioning the K-State game before, but now I am no longer questioning. We win by 7. Look at that. So Pele says winning by 7. And I think we could win by 7. I think we could win by 3 or 7. I think it's going to be a low scoring, I should say not a low scoring game, but it's not going to be a blowout. It's going to be a 1-score game. And I think it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. And it could even be whoever has the ball last in OT. So Polo says, my positive is here is I believe our O-line now believes in themselves. The QB play and running game will impress us tomorrow. I'm really looking for the running game to show up. I'm afraid. No, I'm not afraid. I would like to see us not rely on the fact that we know that K-State's secondary is suspect and that we can just pass on them all day long. Because at that point, if we do that, I think it's just going to be a back and forth all game. They're going to run for a touchdown. We're going to pass for touchdown, run for touchdown, pass for touchdown. Somebody's going to get, and hopefully it's us, is going to get some turnovers, and that could be the difference in the game if we do something like that. But East Coast Kev comes in and says 42-14. He thinks it's going to be a dominating performance. Now, if we can beat the number 18 team 42-14, then we are going to be in the top 25. And by the way, did you know that Colorado received 3 votes to be in the for top 25? And I still don't know why some of these teams are ranked ahead of us. It blows my mind. So this is the game, and I think every game is that game. Like every game, everybody says, if we beat them, we're going to be ranked. If we beat them, we're going to be ranked. And then we do all of that, and then we're not ranked. And then K-State holds their ranking, even though they were basically bludgeoned by BYU, even though BYU is a top 20 team. I don't know. I'm just, I guess I'm done with the rants. T says, Polo, I agree. I think the CU running back show out this game. It's going to be really awesome to see Dallin in there. And I think Dallin's going to want revenge on having to miss the last, 2 games? The last game or 2 games that he was out. And he's going to want blood. He's going to want to get 6.5 yards per carry, which is not unfathomable because KSU is rushing for 6.9 yards per carry, using all of their backs. So why not? Why not us? We can do that too. Don't worry about rankings of the last 3 weeks. I know. I just like saying in the shows the number, 21 buffs, or the number 18 buffs, or the number 24 buffs. I just like that number on there. It feels good, and it feels like we're getting the respect that's due. But on the other hand, I'm also a little bit of I'm afraid, because I'm afraid if we get ranked that, it could mean bad things for us coming up against some of the best teams that we're going to be playing this year. KR says, personally, I think Iowa State is the only really good team in the Big 12. Very solid overall. We didn't talk about them. Yeah, we didn't talk about Iowa State. Very solid team all the way around. Defense and special teams will determine the outcome of the game. KR says, right now at least. He's talking about Iowa State. And it's just, Iowa State's just like, I don't know, man. My mom is from Iowa, and she's an Iowa State fan, I guess you could say. And I've never connected with that school. Like if I'm going to pick an Iowa school, I'm probably going to pick Iowa, but definitely not Iowa State. And but Iowa State now, early in the year, didn't really impress me too much, but lately they're kind of scary a little bit. But if we can get to the Big 12 championship game at that point, I want to win it. But just getting there after what we've been through the last 2 years and what Coach Prime has been through, and our coaching staff and our players and the school, with all of the notoriety and media and just Boulder basically being turned into a superstar mecca, to see us get the due for all of that exposure and being in the Big 12 championship game is just going to be a feather in our cap. It's going to be a feather for Coach Prime. I think all of us want it for Coach Prime, but I think a good portion of the CU faithful that have been here for decades and decades and decades want Rick George to get his due. And I'm going to say that right now. Like when we win the Big 12 championship, get to the Big 12 championship, when we have a stellar year this year compared to what people thought, my first thought is, hell yes, Rick George. Way to build a freaking school, way to build a team, way to build everything under his purview has just gotten better and better over time. Basketball, everything. So I'm really looking forward to him getting his due, and I know Coach Prime is in that same boat. If you get there, you want to win it. Yes, that's true, T. Trauma is real. All right, guys. So I'm going to end it right there. I appreciate everybody that's come into this chat. K-State is not going to be a pushover. The most evenly matched game this year so far, and I wouldn't have said that going into the year, but I really feel like this is going to be a battle. And I think that we're going to battle them through the air, and they're going to battle on us through the ground. And it's going to be a really impressive game from that standpoint. So looking forward to seeing you guys there. If you haven't subscribed, I've been noticing that a lot of subs have been falling off from the standpoint of like, I subbed a bunch of channels and then I go back in and watch them and find out that I'm not subbed anymore. So if you check your sub and just make sure that you're subbed, I would appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do so. This is a free show. Don't ask for anything from me. I just appreciate you hanging out with me. And I have another video hopefully coming up tonight. I'm definitely going to be live tomorrow evening. You know me, I like to go live at the games. So see me before that, okay? And we'll talk more about K-State football and CU. That's a wrap from Alpine Garage Sports. I will see you in the next video.